This is Ponder Darling, my busted heart, and I want to talk a little bit more about autism and narcissism. Because it's just, I think it's the one thing that lingers in terms of like how disturbing it is. And I made this video about Asperger's versus narcissism, and I said, it's really dangerous to say that somebody on the spectrum can't have narcissistic personality disorder, and I want to share why that's dangerous. Because it's dangerous because it can hurt people. It hurt me, because like I said in that video, I have a lot of experience with people on the spectrum. I love people on the spectrum. I do. I love them because they're real. They're authentic. They live in real time. They're not trying to manipulate people. They don't lie. Now, I'll probably get comments like, oh yeah, I know somebody with autism that lies. I know sometimes they do tell stories. Jefferson's brother actually has this completely made up girlfriend that he talks about all the time. But he's not trying to manipulate anybody with that story. It's just something he does. And so there's a difference between the way that people on the autism spectrum tell stories and people on the cluster B spectrum tell stories. So I knew getting into my relationship with Jefferson that he was on the spectrum. He's very high functioning. In fact, so high functioning that he has had a really difficult time getting a diagnosis. And just no support, because there's other members of his family that are like way lower functioning on the autism spectrum. So I was completely down for him. I was completely down for being engaged and marrying somebody on the autism spectrum. Like I said, my best friend is on the spectrum, and I love him. He's awesome. And I've worked with children for decades on the spectrum, and I love them. I think they're amazing. People always say, well, oh, how can you be so patient with them? Well, they're it's not hard for me. It's not hard for me because they're real. They just are how they are. The part that's hard for me is when people, are not authentic and they manipulate you and you don't even know you're being manipulated. That's the hard part. People on the spectrum who just feel what they feel. And sometimes, they melt down. So what? Or they have weird little quirky behaviors. Actually, I loved Jefferson's quirky behavior. It was one of the things I loved the most about him, is the quirky little things that he would do. But to be honest, if I knew that he had narcissistic personality disorder in addition to being on the autism spectrum, I would not have engaged in a romantic relationship with him. Because dealing with somebody on the autism spectrum is hard enough. I mean, they do require a lot of work, and I was more than prepared to do that work. But once you add NPD into the mix, it's impossible. So, a lot of the things that he did, when I thought all he was autistic, I just attributed all his behavior to autism, especially that seeming lack of empathy. I was always like, oh, well, yeah, that's how people with autism are. They appear to not have any empathy. And so, it was a little disturbing, but I was like, well, that's what I got myself into. He's autistic, so that's how he's going to act. But the truth is he never really had any empathy because he was a narcissist as well. So so it was very, very hard to change that paradigm. It really messed me up, y'all. It messed me up because, when I figured out that he planned on leaving me and he just like used this excuse to leave me so he could go be with this girl half his age. That's all stuff that generally people on the spectrum would not do. People on the autism spectrum, in my experience, are very loyal. I mean, they will so if you push them to the point, my best friend, he does this all the time. Like he'll get to the point where he's just like, you're dead to me. Like he'll tell me of like, that person's dead to me now. I'm never speaking to them again. And I'm like, oh, okay. But they don't scheme. That's a scheme. That whole thing that Jefferson did was a scheme. It was a manipulation scheme, because he got bored with my narcissistic supply and he wanted to get old. I mean, he had already known her. She cheated on her boyfriend with him. So that's not typical of somebody on the autism spectrum. So I lost precious time in my life, and I wasted my resources and my energy because I believed that somebody on the autism spectrum could not also have narcissistic personality disorder. And it really messed me up. It didn't destroy my life because, I'm a fighter. Like nothing knocks me down forever. But it really messed me up, and it caused me and my kid a lot of grief that we could have, if I had known that Jefferson also was a narcissist, I could have avoided that. So that's why I say, it's dangerous to believe that somebody on the autism spectrum can never have narcissistic personality disorder. That's not true. Thanks.